Thank you and good evening, and I hope it's been a fun evening up till now. How's it been going? It's been great? Brilliant. So let's unbox the brain, as we normally call it, and what's the talk about. So I can see the poll result, and first of all, thank you for giving us this poll as well. And I can see about 34% say that AI is going to be the biggest force for change in future. And some 16% also believe that the humanity is doomed, because AI is going to rule, or machines are going to rule, the way we essentially look at life. My talk, essentially, today is going to be structured in 3 phases. I'm going to give you a past of what's happened, the present, what's going on, and maybe the future on what I and my team really researched at this point in time. So let's start. Year is 1939. World War II is raging on. The German ships have been bombarding allies and essentially making sure that no material reaches the citizens as well as the personnel who are working and fighting, and they essentially die out. And during this World War II, there's a young graduate who essentially joins as, from King's College, Cambridge, into one of the Bletchley Park institutes, where he is supposed to entangle one of the biggest mysteries in the future. He joins a team of crypto analysts. The team is run by a very, very dynamic general called Commander Dennison, who essentially is known for, the way he is actually running the war. He has only one task. The task is to uncode or untangle a code that is being sent by Germans called the Enigma. This is the machine. Germans used to use this machine to send encrypted codes. These codes changed every single day. And as a result of that, the Britishers or the Allies would not know what's coming at the behest. Germans would essentially give these codes, fire on, and essentially make life miserable, and Britishers or Allies were losing the war. This young graduate had an epiphany. And that epiphany, little did he realize that it is going to be a world-changing phenomena for 21st century. Despite a voracious hacking skills within the team, and you can see the team over here. On the right-hand side is Hugh Alexander. Hugh Alexander was one of the most famous crypto analysts and a chess player. And despite that, breakage of Enigma is almost impossible. And the reason is very well known. Codes change every 24 hours. Codes are not known. They are encrypted. So the machines cannot work well, or humans cannot work well. In fact, according to an estimate, it would take 100,000 people spread across the entire world, working 24 hours in tandem to break these codes together, which was humanly not possible. This young graduate had an epiphany. And this epiphany essentially led him to build one of the biggest things in technological revolution that we would ever see. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Alan Turing. And Alan Turing is considered as the father of modern science, modern computer science, and artificial intelligence. And we have a joke in our team and in our profession. Whether we keep any other images of gods and goddesses, we should keep Alan Turing's photo with us so that it constantly reminds us of what he has done. Turing's epiphany led him to build this machine. And you can see the machine itself. It's a huge monster. It's the monster which is built with pulleys and strings. But what this machine did was that if German codes used to come in, this machine used to crank up pulleys and make sure that the resultant decode of that encrypted code happened within 6 hours. A vast difference between 24 hours that you see to what was done in 6 hours over here. And Turing, by doing this, gave an approach to humankind on how machines can think and how they can learn, which we today call as artificial intelligence. So I'm not going to take a lot of time in explaining what AI is, but a very simple explanation. In simple terms, it's the ability given to a machine to learn. And if you look at this graph, there are 2 mechanisms that happen. One, in which you can give machine a lot of data, and the machine tries to figure out a data which is not known, which is on the left-hand side, which is called supervised learning. And what you see is all those squares, crosses, and circles. So the machine tries to figure out what lies in the realm of a circle and what lies in the realm of a square or a cross. On the other side is unsupervised learning, where no data is provided to a machine. And the machine tries to cluster itself based on its own knowledge. And that's probably real AI at this point. So we'd leave it over here. Turing was also attributed to a very good test that he gave. And that test is essentially shown over here. That test is commonly now called as Turing Test. If you notice what's happening in the test, there is a human evaluator called A, and they've got a computer B and a computer C and a human B in different rooms. The task of the evaluator is to ask questions, both to the human being as well as to the computer. And if the evaluator cannot differentiate whether he's talking to a machine or a human being, at the end of the test, the machine has supposedly passed this Turing test. So Turing test has become one of those bedrock systems that researchers like me probably use to train our machines and run algorithms, and it is one of the biggest things that probably AI had seen. A little bit about myself as well. My initiation into the world of AI happened with a very famous TV flick. This TV flick was called Star Trek, that happened in 1985. In fact, I even went ahead and constructed a small Star Trek model back at home, and this was using household supplies. But the idea was that if you watch Star Trek, science fiction has already become science today. And the way the people in the ship could command the USS Enterprise with their natural language or human language, and the way doors and windows would open themselves when somebody entered or went close by, essentially got me thinking as to what is this world. And when I graduated, my research essentially took me to some of the places and also Turing's work to figure out what could be the next wave that we are probably looking at. Sorry. And I can end this talk by saying that AI is probably the best, and AI has done some wonders, and we can all go home. Right. But the human mind is a psyche, has a curiosity factor built inside it, and the human mind wants to know more. So we'll get back to a little more on what we want to decipher. And I want to decipher within this talk something about the human brain as well. When I started researching and I started looking at Turing's work, I went back to the Turing test. And Turing test was, because it was the bedrock, I wanted to also understand whether it is essentially doing the things that it had to do, or there was some kind of a problem associated with that test. We replaced the computer with another human being. And now you've got 3 humans sitting in 3 different rooms. But the human evaluator, which is A, speaks a language which is hitherto unknown to B and C, or maybe only to C. And he's speaking in Chinese. Now, interviewee B knows Chinese very well, but interviewee C, who's just been transplanted in terms of computer, has been given a chit or a farra to note what Chinese would be. When this human evaluator starts asking questions in Chinese, he still cannot decipher whether he's talking to a person who knows Chinese well as a language, or he does not know Chinese language well. Now, this is a sort of a flaw within Turing test. In his epiphany to make machines which are intelligent, Turing might have missed out one of the biggest components of intelligence, which is intelligence itself. And what I want to do, and what my research really does, is essentially to figure out the seat of intelligence, which is your human brain, which is how does the brain really think? And can we bring that brain in some format or the other to a machine so that it becomes much more commonsensical? It says unboxing the brain box as TEDx talk or a TEDx event. My talk is also about unboxing the grandest machine that has ever been built, which is, of course, the brain that sits. The brain that sits within you can only be taken into a small crinkled sheet of paper and has about 60 billion neurons, which are essentially firing for it. AI of today has done some wonderful things. This is a picture of Lee Sedol, a human Go player and one of the champions. And he was defeated by a computer in one of the most difficult games that is ever played. Now, all of us know chess. Chess has got about 8 by 8 squares. A Go, on the other hand, has about 19 by 19 squares. The combinations and permutations that you can pick up a machine for are too many as compared to a chess game. In this tournament that really happened, the machines did a wonderful thing. It is already known in the world of Go that the last 2 lines, which is 17 and 18, would never be utilized by a human player. The machines actually utilized that particular lines, 18 and 19, and defeated the Go player, but also told humanity that there is another way of playing these games. So this was unhindered AI, unhindered machines that had learned on their own, and they defeated a human champion. But not everything is lost over there. So from Lee Sedol to making these eerie robots that look very, very human, the AI or the machines have really surpassed what we would probably do today. If you give a machine some 10,000 images today and tell her that it is a dog or a cat in different forms, sizes, and postures, and give any other image that is not present in the other data set, machines today would find out that system even better than human beings today. That's called the vision system of a machine. Right? So the machines are already taking in some portions of the other, or helping us detect cancer, helping us detect whatever we do from a normal life. Why then study the brain? The question that I had in mind was, there are certain facets which the machines cannot do well. The act of riding a bicycle and learning and remembering, and then making sure that you can run a motorbike as well, is a facet that only human beings have. Machines don't have that facet. They don't have common sense built into it. The ability to communicate with someone who does not know your language, but still use sign languages to communicate, is an ability that only we have as human beings. Machines would never have that. This is something that we made, which was essentially a machine looking at a human crossing to figure out how the autonomous car in this world would run. And if you notice, the machine only thinks that the human person is a box. Our research goes into thinking about something like this. Is she going to walk? What are her emotions running? What would she do next? This is not currently possible with some of the machines that you do. And machines fail in a lot of ways on some of the common sense that we really apply onto our system. A machine was given this system of stop with love and hate written on top. Nearly 90% of the machines failed to stop. The autonomous cars had an accident. What would the machines do over here? The arrow shows turn right, but there's written something called left turn. If Turing test was to be applied, the machines would either go left or right, but also crash at the same point in time. So there is some kind of a hindrance to what machines can today think about. All of you can look at this picture and say, there's probably a smoggy or a foggy condition, and there's a rail track which is available. You can also figure out what's going on in this picture. There's a person, maybe a male or a female, I can't know, but there is somebody behind this obfuscation that is there. When we gave this data to machines, about 85% of the machines on this image said that it was a polar bear. We all know it's a cat with her face inside a sandal. When given this kind of a data to a machine, 80% of the machines thought this is a violin. This is a broken chair. Now, this comes to my next question. Can we unravel this mystery through looking via your brain, understanding what goes inside your brain, understanding the neuroscientific aspect? So what you see over here is the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain has a palum, which is called a hippocampus, which has got spatial memory and fast learning. It has got a midbrain, which is known for emotions and basic learned behavior. It's got autonomous behavior, which is there in the brain stem, and a reflex behavior in your spinal cord. This is the human brain. 75% of your brain is exactly similar to a reptile. You also have those same behaviors that a reptile would have. If you touch a hot object today, you would take your hand back. That reaction does not come from your brain. That reaction comes from your spinal cord at the back end. That reflex behavior prevents you from burning the hand, because if the signal was to go to the brain and come back, your hands would really burn. However, we as human species has one component inside which is very different from all the brains that you see. And this is that neocortex. Takes 75% of the value of the brain, but is responsible for anything and everything you think. which includes your gods, goddesses, faiths, beliefs, disbeliefs, what am I going to do next, is all lying at the seat of this 75% sector, which is called neocortex. So let's unravel it. By mistake, a famous scientist called Dr. Crick, while dissecting a mice brain, essentially dropped a dye inside the brain of the mice. Somehow, the regions got preserved. And when he looked up those regions, it looked like this. It's a mesh, but it is also a hierarchy of thinking. If you look at the hierarchy of regions, regions are remarkably similar across your brain, and in modality as well as in function. The deduction was all regions are performing something similar. They recognize sensory inputs, which is coming to you from wherever in the world. They allow your body to take an action, and that action happens in sequences. So everything that you do, for example, me stepping over, is also an action my brain is saying in a sequential term looking at the future. And the brain continues to do that. In another thought experiment, or maybe a practical experiment, what scientists did was they actually cut out a nerve from the somatosensory part of a brainstem of a rat. And instead of connecting the region that this somatosensory cortex connected, they connected it to the eyes. That region of the brain, which was supposed to sense touch, started seeing in less than 1 month. And when I say see, it was the actual version of seeing, like any other human being would see. And another thought experiment, the nerve that was connected by your ear to that sector of the brain, where you could hear things. And we know that hearing is a logarithmic response. It's not a binary response. If you could do that and cut it and put it to the eye again, that region again started seeing in the real region of the world. What does it really mean? The cortex, your brain, has only one algorithm. That algorithm, based on different senses of the world, it takes on different facets and converts it into a life that you are probably looking at. What you are today and what you think you are today is a culmination of a lot of sequences of efforts or events that has happened in your childhood, and that is what the brain's probably looking at. How does the brain really think? The brain essentially creates a large part of it into memory. And this memory, the brain also shifts. In another experiment, scientists, what they did was they essentially looked at some of the people who were affected by 9/11 based on their position and place. One of them was an 11-year-old girl who's probably grown up now. And when they asked her what happened, she said, it was horrendous. I was inside my house. I was playing up with my computer. Suddenly, I saw a gray, dark smoke bellowing in front of my window. And my mother was working in New York, so I was really scared. You know what really happened? She was in the house, right? But she was far, far away from 9/11. The smoke did not reach her place. Her mother worked in Cincinnati and not in New York. Over a period of 10, 15 years, this girl had shifted memories. And she was a normal girl, like any of us are. What you think is your memory has also been shifted by the brain in a lot of context of what you've been fearing. Let's do a thought experiment. When I show these 3 words as APP, you guys would fill it up differently. Your brains are wired differently. Somebody would say Apple. Somebody would say application. Somebody would say something else. It is a culmination of sequence that you've been learning very recently, and that's what really the brain does. It essentially gives you that. And most of you would be privy to this WhatsApp system that was sent across, saying that if you know what these words are, then you are the smartest human being on this planet. Well, all of us can. The reason for that is the moment we see only 3 letters, the brain starts sequencing, starts making a memory out of it. And the more it creates it, it starts creating and procrastinating a sort of a future for yourself. So even if I don't know the word, I would still take the first word as apple, gigantic, barbaric, dangling, bright, or whatever. I can still read those words. That doesn't mean I'm the greatest and the greatest mind on this planet. All of those minds can do it. Another thought experiment. When you go back home, just think about if the doorknob of your handle has been shifted from right to left. 80% of us don't realize unless we open the door and go in. Because the net resultant of the future is you opening the door and moving in. It does not matter whether the doorknob was on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. It is only when you've entered the house, you suddenly click and realize there's something amiss. Maybe the doorknob had shifted. So this is what the brain is doing, and this is the mysterious facet of brain. And this is what I and a team of researchers with me study to see what's going on and how can we probably build the machines of the future. There are some talks on Neuralink, and this is an example which Elon Musk and his team are doing. Neuralink would essentially produce these fibers, which you see, thin hairline fibers, and plant it into a patient's brain. And the control is through that white box behind the ear. So any Alzheimer's, any patient suffering from a neurological disorder would essentially be taken care of by putting all of this. So we've already reached this point where machines are trying to intermingle emotions as well as some of the facets that we're trying to do with the world. What are the possibilities on the fringe? And what is the fringe? Well, the country we live in is the fringe. It lies somewhere between the developed and the developing world. Driving in India is not a science, it's an art. Right? So from people coming in from all directions, from all sorts of species that you see on the roads, to people not following rules, autonomous driving has become some kind of a challenge in India. But if we can solve the problem on the fringe, we can probably give the world something to look at. Because in their part of the world, everything's very, very settled, very set with rules and possibilities. The other facet is India's wealth. The richest 1% in India hold 56% of the wealth, and this is the wealth pyramid. And that encounters for a large amount of inequality where you are looking at. Technology proposes to bridge that gap. We are not just geographically diverse, we are linguistically diverse as well. India today has 22 languages and 1645 dialects. Even in the center where I am, called Maharashtra, there are 4 languages which are hidden. You only speak a variant of it, whatever you speak in Aurangabad. Air pollution has become one of the biggest killers in India. If you look at Delhi, number of deaths through air pollution is much more than cancer today. So where do we go to solve these challenges on the fringe? One of the things that I and my team are doing is researching on Sanskrit and Tamil. The idea behind this is while English could be one of those languages that we use for communication, Sanskrit is the language which is well formed with 4,000 rules, which can essentially give us the ability to communicate anywhere, anytime. And that's an ability that we are trying to build in. Hopefully, you should see something next year from us over there. Sustainability is a big challenge. The planet's reeling under pressure. As a result of that, we're using technology and some of the things that we look from biological aspects, like the brain, to probably look at sowing seeds, using a drone, for example, on a hill. And these are things that we're trying to do. We are at the precipice of human revolution, where Elon Musk and his team are trying to essentially set ourselves on Mars. There is a quintessential question that comes to us. Is it going to be the beginning of the end, with machines taking over? And my straight-jacketed, straight-faced answer to you would be no. We are not trying to create sentient beings, and you can look at it from researchers across the world. We are trying to look at the brain and to catapult the brain into some of those algorithms of AI, which could take humanity for the betterment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with that same enigma that Alan Turing was faced some 80 years ago. And it is not possible to solve that enigma with 100,000 people working in tandem. We would have to look towards machines. And if anything that you want to take away from this talk is not to be worried about AI, but let's have machines work with us, for us, and our future. Thank you. This is an example of the robot that we have built it. And this is an example of what we can do. This is an example of a pepper robot. The idea behind this is that robots could probably talk. I also have my kid who is 6-year-old who comes and visits these robots. The first reaction is, of course, an awe. But the second reaction is, how can we make it much more better? So again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and it's been wonderful. Thank you.